United States has a fairly direct role in what's happening today, and as the students begin and youth begin to analyze it, it's becoming a major issue in terms of how far they'll be able to change the model. Besides the nearly $3 billion that's come through the Merida Initiative, there's also Department of Defense money, and that money is going to train police forces and armed forces that now we find are directly involved in attacks on the people, and particularly attacks on youth. We mentioned the case of Tlatlaya, where 22 youth were now, it seems, by all evidence available, actually executed by the armed forces. And the State Department has admitted that in that battalion, although we don't know because they won't give us the names, there are 5 individuals that were trained in the United States. So there's been a call for a long time to stop the Merida Initiative precisely for this reason, because of what John mentioned, that the state agents at this point in Mexico and organized crime are one and the same in many, many parts of the country.
And the meeting, presumably, President Obama spoke with President Peña Nieto in China in this meeting that they're having around the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. What do you think, Laura Carlson, needs to be done? Where is the accountability for this, where this money goes, and this connection between the police forces, the drug gangs, in fact, often indistinguishable? And how high up does this go?
Well, the main point at this point that President Obama and President Peña Nieto, John mentioned the problem that he seems to have been more dedicated by far to damage control than to ever resolving the problem here in Mexico. And there's a reason for that. The main thing that both of them are concerned with is foreign investment. Mexico, with the reforms under Peña Nieto, that the Ayotzinapa students were very active in protesting, by the way, which is a big part of why they've been targeted as well, is now betting the entire country on foreign investment, especially in the newly opened oil and gas area. And President Obama and the Mexican government and the transnational corporations that are based in the U.S. have been pushing this, and it's one of the reasons they created this very false image of everything's great and modern, and Peña Nieto is the great reformer in Mexico that has now been completely shattered by the revelations, not just of the 43 students, but the mass graves and the disappearances and the corruption and collusion throughout the country. So right now, first of all, in the United States, all funding to these police and military forces through this drug war model, which has militarized the country and created a new model for repression against youth and against opposition, must be cut off immediately, or we're directly responsible for future crimes which will occur. And on the Mexican side, the call in all these marches, and I've been to giant marches, 50,000, 100,000. There's assemblies in UNAM. I've been to 4 or 5 in which students are already planning what to do to force the resignation of Peña Nieto. The idea is, if there's a country where there can be mass graves, if there's a country where 43 students can go missing at the hands of state agents, then something is so deeply wrong that the government needs to be changed completely, and the whole system needs to be changed. So there are constant discussions to try to figure out how to do that, but there's a very firm commitment on the part of these protests that whatever happens in terms of the fate of the students right now, it will not end there.
And do you think, Laura Carlson, that police in Iguala could have benefited from U.S. funds?
Yeah, it's very possible. There's a fund for municipal security, for example, that they received 80 million pesos from, but we're having a very hard time tracking it because we can't get the money, the information from the State Department or the Mexican government to make direct ties. But it doesn't matter in the broader sense, because what we know is that the United States is funding this drug war to support security forces that it turns out are in deep collusion with the criminal forces, and that in fact this collusion is directed against the population instead of being the good guy government against the bad guy drug cartels. And so even if you don't find the smoking gun or the exact ties between this dollar went to this government agency, we know it's there. And in fact, the Merida Initiative lately has explicitly gone more toward municipal funding, which is even more problematic in Mexico because that's where you find the highest levels of direct collusion.
Could you explain, Laura Carlson, what the Merida Initiative is?
Yeah, the Merida Initiative was started by the Bush administration in 2007. It was announced as a counter-narcotics, counter-terrorism, and border security initiative, and then was funded in 2008. And the Obama administration, instead of coming in after the 3-year initiative ran out and saying, well, what are the results of this? We already knew that the results were increased violence in Mexico, announced that it would be extended indefinitely, and indeed that's what's happened. So this goes to training police forces. At the beginning, it went to funding a lot of big-ticket military equipment. There's a constant lobbying effort on the part of defense companies, intelligence companies, and private security firms in the United States to perpetuate the Merida Initiative and to perpetuate the drug war in Mexico. And it seems to have no impact whatsoever that we can go and say to Congress, there's a direct correlation between this model and 100,000 people dead. This is not working. It's not only not working, it's completely dangerously counterproductive.